better stay with us till the end of the show.
I will, of course, absolutely.
Now, the days are getting shorter and darker, and Tuesday of this week marked the first day of winter, but there is still lots of activity taking place outdoors and lots of exploring to do.
Ireland is a haven for wildlife with our parks and even our gardens teaming up with creatures such as squirrels, hedgehogs, insects and birds. So we decided to have a look at what's on offer. Joining Tommy now, we have Debbi Pedreschi, is it?
Pedreschi.
Pedreschi. We actually had a Russian version of that earlier on the side of the afternoon. We were talking about it. And of course, Debbi, you're from the Irish Wildlife Trust. You're very welcome. You're here to tell us what's actually out there.
Yep, thanks very much for having me.
It's very autumnal still. We were just chatting actually as we were walking through reception in RTE. The leaves are still brown. It's still quite mild. So we're still in that autumn phase, even though it's officially winter.
Exactly. I mean, we're only officially into winter a couple of days now, but the temperatures have still stayed warm. So although the leaves have changed colour, they haven't necessarily fallen. But the thing is that people don't generally think about what's actually going on behind that, why the leaves are changing colour. And the thing is that it's actually a defence mechanism for the trees, because you're coming into shorter days, so they're not going to have as long to be able to photosynthesize and make their own food. And the water that's in the soil will actually be frozen, so they won't be able to take that up. So what they do is they basically suck all the nutrients back out of the leaves into their trunks, which makes them go all papery and thin. And the chlorophyll, which they use for photosynthesis, comes back into the leaves as well, or into the actual tree itself, and that's the green colour. So that's where they lose their colour.
They just don't have enough energy to have green leaves.
Yeah, essentially they take it all back in and store it up over winter. It's like a hibernation for a tree.
What else is happening out there, behind the scenes, behind all that, with the animals and all this?
Well, we're also getting migration and hibernation is happening, but it's not just of the obvious species that everybody thinks of, such as the hedgehogs and the birds, but the likes of insects are also going into a kind of hibernation. They're ectothermic, so they can't regulate their own body temperature. So they need to find other strategies to do that. Some migrate, some do go into torpor or diapause, where they basically put their metabolism on pause for the winter. Others will go through and will actually time their life cycle stages to match up with the winter. So they might be in eggs or larval form.
And some of them come into my bathroom and wander around and terrify me.
No, tell me.
And
spiders?
And one of our
spiders, of course. Spiders.
Yeah. Well, one of our researchers, producers rather, Sinead. Is that Sinead spider? That's Sinead spider. Look at this. Okay, this came into her house.
Right. That's actually domestic house spiders, so they do tend to be around throughout the year, but at this time of year they're coming out and mating, and they're also trying to find warm spots within the house, because obviously they can't regulate their temperature. So you see a lot more of them around this time of year than you would perhaps throughout the rest of the year.
That explains it then.
Yeah, because you had a big, there was a huge one in your house.
It was huge, it was awful.
She actually took a picture of it, Tommy, as opposed to running away from it. She started giving the whole day giving out about it.
What about the birds, Debbi, in the garden as well? Because there's a lot of activity there, and now people start thinking about feeding birds as well in the winter.
Yeah, I mean, there's an awful lot of species have left, but not everything has. You know, there's still a lot of life in your gardens. And despite the fact that we may have lost a lot of the 12,000 insect species that are resident in Ireland throughout the year, those numbers have gone down, but there are other birds and animals still around. For instance, the robin, which is one of the very...
What are we seeing here?
You're looking at a blue tit. So it's one of the more colourful characters that you see.
They? Yeah.
So you get blue tits, that's a chaffinch, I believe.
And they stay around for the winter, they also...
They do, yeah. They stay the winter through.
What's this
that's a coal tit, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So they'll be around, and if you leave out seeds and things like that to try and attract them in, there's a green finch there as well.
But you shouldn't throw out nuts.
You can put out nuts, but I'd recommend you do it in one of those feeders, so that they can peck at them rather than taking them whole. Because if you take them whole, it can present a choking hazard to them.
One viewer, Debbi, says, birds are very hungry after the storms. Please tell people only to put food out that is cleared, or it encourages rats. I'm not sure if we got that right, but just to be careful putting out food. But is that right, that after a stormy period that we should feed birds?
Well, it depends again what they're going to be looking at and what species it is, because I mean, if there's an awful lot of water and floods and stuff like that, it might be washing away a lot of what they're eating normally. So if you do leave out food, just make sure that you're not leaving out anything that's dried. So no desiccated coconut, no dry bits of bread or rice or anything that will expand once it gets into the animal's stomachs.
No dry bread?
Not really dried bread. If you are putting out bread, wet it beforehand.
I didn't know that.
Because it makes it easier for them to digest, and then they get more moisture as well. But you can also leave out things like grated cheese, chopped fruit. They'll even take cat and dog food,
Will other animals come in looking for that, though?
They can do. It depends where you're going to put it as well. If you put it on a bird table and you're just looking for birds, it's going to be a bit safer up there. If you want to entice other animals in, then leave it down on the ground so that they can access it there too.
What kind of animals would you like to entice into your garden?
Well, because the weather's still warm, you might still get some hedgehogs around. People are divided on foxes, whether you love them or hate them, but foxes for a lot of people are very important as well. Squirrels.
Are foxes aggressive at all? The urban fox, because there's an awful lot of them around. I don't know if people have seen them in the urban setting, but they're very common. But are they aggressive? Are they getting aggressive?
They don't tend to be aggressive. There's a lot of stories that go around about foxes, especially at this time of year, because they are getting hungrier. You're going to stop them from being aggressive if you're feeding them in the first place, so obviously they're not going to come into your house looking for it if there's food outside. The only time that they tend to be aggressive is if you're cornering them. So if you see one, just don't put, like any wild animal, don't put it in a corner in a situation where it feels threatened. Usually they'll run away far before you will because they're more scared of you than you are of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And squirrels you mentioned as well.
Yeah, squirrels. I mean, obviously you usually get to see more grey squirrels, unfortunately, than red squirrels these days. But you do have the potential for inviting either of those into your garden when you leave out foodstuffs.
Great. Thank you very much, Debbie. It's fascinating stuff.
You.
Now it is time to reveal the winner of today's competition, who will take home not the cash and not one,